Board of Education to order by standing and pledging the flag, which is on the monitors in the room.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Engel?
Present.
Mr. Zappa?
Here.
Mrs. Gillis? Here. Dr. Messer? Present. Mrs. Wackels is absent.
Okay. I would take a recommendation to adopt the agenda as it is presented, and if any addendums if you may have received any today.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second on the floor for item 4. Is there any discussion or comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gillis?
Aye.
Mr. Zappa?
Aye.
Dr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Engel?
Aye. No one from the public has signed up to address this evening, so we'll move right on to item number 5 on the agenda, which would be the presentation and recommendation to approve the 5-year forecast, which Madam Treasurer has prepared for you, and you've had the opportunity to look at it electronically, and there's a hard copy in front of you. Madam Treasurer?
Thank you. I'm going to stand, guys. I do have a joke about forecasting. So I think it was one in the Plain Dealer, and it's copyrighted, so I can't put it up here. But anyways, there's this two fellas standing over on this side of the room, and an angry group of people on the other side of the room. And the two fellas over here just saying, we're mathematicians, we just report the numbers. And the angry people on this side of the room said, say some nicer numbers or die. So it's just a funny little joke about how differing people's opinions are about forecasting. And this is a forecast. We're employing that which we know today to try to figure out what's going to happen in the future. And things aren't always as they seem. Dr. Messer could go on a lot about that legislatively. What are our goals for this evening? What's the purpose of the forecast? You all know that, but we'll review it very quickly for those watching when it's posted on the YouTube channel. So what's the purpose? We're going to review expenditures and revenue in detail, and we'll finish with the 4-year forecast. Recall, it's the current year plus 3 prospective years now. What's the basis for the report? It's required in the Ohio Revised Code. It's submitted to the Department of Education and Workforce. It's semi-annual. Used to be November, used to be October, then it was November. Now it's October 15th, and next year it's going to be August 31st. Used to be May 31st for the update, and now it's going to be February 28th or 9th in leap year. It includes the general fund. There's an X through the 016 emergency levy fund. We are not required to use that anymore. We didn't use it, then we were required to use the 016 fund for the emergency levy. Now we're not. The detail consists of 3 prior years. So fiscal 25, 24, and 23 are our prior years. And moving forward, it's fiscal 26, the current year we're in, plus 27, 8, and 9. It's revenue expenditures, projected cash balances, and most importantly, that really large document in front of you that's nearly 40 pages long. Those are the assumptions. That includes history on every revenue line, every expenditure line. It employs certain assumptions in building the forecast. And I think it's more important than the actual mechanics of the forecast. So the purpose, we know that the purpose is a roadmap of the district's future. We are looking heavily at state revenue and local revenue. That's not changed. It's just higher and higher stakes. There's a planning for consistency employed in the forecast. There's a planning for change. Is there enrollment changes? Are there enrollment changes? Is there inflation that we need to worry about? And then it shows the district's anticipated revenues, projected expenditures, and our cash balance. This is really important because we have legislative changes in the cash balance where it really wasn't limited previously. Then it was going to be 50%. Now it's 30%. 30% actually is less than the board's policy for adequate cash balance. Obstacles, what are our biggest obstacles? Uncertainty. And it can be either positive or detrimental to us. Federal awards, we have a huge change that all of the federal awards are gone from COVID. That was Coronavirus Relief Fund, ESSER, ESSER 2, and ARP ESSER. And then we also received like a bus grant and things like that. Those things are all gone. And those who were funded from the ARP ESSER grant, for instance, have moved into the general fund. And they've been calling this down at OASBO and with colleagues and such, they've been calling it the fiscal cliff, because we were able to move expenditures from the general fund into the federal grants. Now they've moved back to the general fund. So we have huge changes in income streams. There's changes in legislation. There's multiple biennial budgets. And then we've had inflationary economic conditions in the last few years, most of which we haven't recovered from. Even though inflation has slowed, it was about 8%, now it's sitting around 3%, prices still haven't reset to pre-COVID levels. So we're still paying more for everything. We're paying more for our utilities, we're paying more for our commodities. Everything that needs to be shipped or sent to us is more expensive because of shipping costs and such. So we know, this is the Cliff's Notes, or I'll say Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. We know that revenue is static. We know that total expenditures grow rapidly. New revenue is necessary. We've been saying this for a couple of years at least. And then the written assumptions, charts and graphs, and the appendix are important to the forecast. You'll see here a study on salary compensation. We know that steps are included in this calculation. So with each year of experience, our classified and our certified professional staff move a step in experience. That step is for ATA somewhere around 2.1%. And for OPSI, it's 3% of the base. And we know that's just them being reemployed a subsequent year that wages are going to increase by that amount. There is, however, not a base increase planned into the forecast. I haven't. Since I've been here, I'm in my 8th year. I only plan for what I know. So we know that everyone's going to step, but we don't know that we're going to come to an agreement with the classified and certified union for base increases. There's a potential for retiring staff not to be replaced. There's 4 planned in fiscal 27. And we know that the severance, the bottom pink arrow, and I know this is small, but you need to know that this detail has been covered with the board. The bottom pink arrow is the actual amount of severance that will be paid next year for the retiring staff at the end of this year. And those, we tried to calculate out pretty well. In the yellow box, know that those are the federal salaries. Those are the salaries, I should say, picked up by the federal grant allocations. So if we didn't have those federal grants to the tune of $1.3 million last year, those would be moved into the general fund. Total compensation looks like this. You see those years between 2011 and 2018-19. We were employing the use of attrition, and that is where staff retires, and due to enrollment decreases or less work, doesn't matter if it's professional staff or classified staff, attrition means we're not replacing them and achieving those savings through retirements. You can see in the yellow that for that long period of time, we had static compensation, and then in 22 through 25, we see increases and then more increases in the green forecasted bars. 26 is this year, 27, 8, and 9. We see that salaries are exceeding $30 million by fiscal 29. So this study is on retirement and benefits. We do know that retirement, STRS and SERS are 14% of compensation, and FICA taxes are 1.45%. Those will grow as total compensation grows. For health insurance, we know that Our renewals in the last 3 years were 9.5%, 6.5%, and 6.25%. 8% is the increase that I always use in the outline years, and that is pretty close to inflation. LERC tends to have a better experience than the economy in general, than medical insurance inflation. That's a good thing. The $4.8 million for this fiscal year, there is a $450,000 savings in there. There is a premium holiday in December for the January premium. That's a substantial savings. That's 1/12 of the medical and prescription insurance that we're saving this year because of the premium holiday. But in forward-looking years, there's the 8% renewal included. Dental renewals are typically around 5%. Life is an immaterial sum. It hasn't changed. Vision also fully insured. We've had very small or zero renewals for that. We have some other compensations. Workers' comp and unemployment are also considered part of benefits. All total, we expect this year about $9.7 million in benefits, exceeding 11.8 in fiscal '29. So this is just a study of just the health, dental, vision, and life benefits, and it looks bigger too. It's easier to read. Again, the health and prescription renewal is 8% in forward-looking years, 5% for dental, and static for vision and life. Know that healthcare inflation is picking up pace and exceeds that of the general economy. And where we're really seeing at LERC big changes is the prescription utilization. There's some really expensive drugs out there for like autoimmune diseases and things like that, but GLP-1s are also covered by the consortium, and those are very pricey. So LERC is also researching plan design and changes to the prescription plan. This is a purchase services study, and I think probably what we need to be most aware here is that open enrollment out and tuition for community schools ended halfway through fiscal '22. That was part of the Fair School Funding Plan rollout, that the community schools and open enrollment out, those schools were funded directly, not as a deduction from our foundation revenue. And you'll see in fiscal '21, purchase services were $5.4 million, and last year they were $5,577,000. So they are exceeding pre-open enrollment and community school payments and we've surpassed it now. That's worrisome because it was $1.8 million that was deducted from our foundation back in fiscal '21 for open enrollment and community school. So there are some objects that are really increasing rapidly here. There is a lot of volatility with utilities costs as well as excess costs. And know that in the forecast it's capped at 3%. It's unrealistic. But that was one that had to be capped at 3% growth. It'd be runaway if we did it. This is our utilities history since fiscal '17. Gray is natural gas, orange is water and sewer, and electric is the bright blue. You can see all of them are increasing. Electricity is increasing at about 3.35%, but that's a material sum because 3.3% of $800,000 is a larger sum of money than, say, 15% of $100,000, right? So we know that we can control usage to an extent, but our buildings are active buildings. I mean, they're essentially on all night, right? There's building controls that are on all night, things that people don't really stop to think about. And then water usage. I mean, we water like a soccer field and stuff like that. And it's something that we do for the community. And I'd say it's necessary, but it comes at a cost. So, we can't control usage, but we cannot control, honestly, pricing or the transmission costs or anything like that. For supplies and materials, I don't want to belabor this. This has a very finite set of accounts here. It's mostly supplies and software and textbooks and maintenance and custodial supplies. We have large increases in some of these categories, and the one that's going to be very volatile, or the ones I will say, are instructional materials 511, software 516, and textbooks 520. And let's talk a minute about textbooks, and Mr. Molnar can jump in here. Textbooks, about 13, 14 years ago, the Houghton Mifflins and the Pearsons and those companies were moving somewhat to electronic textbook platforms. They're moving away from the large, heavy printed textbooks and moving to an electronic type delivery method. We thought that the cost of textbooks were going to decrease, right? Well, they haven't. They haven't at all. If anything, they've increased in price. And another thing that they've gotten very cagey about is moving to annual subscriptions. So where you used to be able to adopt a textbook, say a history or a math adoption, and kind of amortize that $600,000 kind of over 6 years before you have to do it all again. Well, now they're annual subscriptions, and if you don't pay that annual subscription, you don't have access to the text. So it's catch-22. You can't be without the curriculum, so you move to the annual subscriptions like they want. We've gone over this. Go ahead.
Question. So the subscriptions, is it like electronic, complementary to the physical?
Yes, but a lot of the resources, for example, used to purchase your workbooks
Right.
or we can make blacklight master copies.
Right.
That's changed. You no longer will have access. So if you purchase 6 years for the curriculum, once the 6 years is up, you're shut off
Right.
because they need to make money. So they force you to purchase another 6 years and so on. So where you used to be able to purchase a textbook, and if it was a good textbook, you might be able to use it for 5, 6, 7, 10 years. We had some English textbooks that were from 1980 when I first started here, right? That the companies have changed that, you know. And as Amy was saying, just anecdotally, I remember when I first started, and we, you know, in 2012-13, when I remember getting a new reading English language arts program for K through 6. You know, seeing that, wow, this is like $300,000, $500,000. That's a lot. Well, we just did that again with the new dyslexia laws and science of reading that we were forced to do. And it was, I think, between $750,000 and $1 million for the same amount or the same number of classrooms and students. So just like utilities, costs are just going up in that area as well.
And some textbooks are purely electronic, and you have to pay that 60 or 60, I think financial literacy is one, isn't it? That's not an actual textbook, right, Mike?
No.
And so you have to pay that $60,000 or so each year to have access to the text and ancillary materials. So the suppliers, the textbook companies have gotten pretty wise, right? And Mrs. Hall and Mike and I have talked about the potential for slowing the textbook adoption process, but in learning more about these subscription-based textbooks, it's kind of difficult to slow the adoption process. Another thing is the 511, which is instructional materials. That has increased substantially in the last couple of years. So you can't really quit buying bus parts. You can't really quit buying toilet paper and soap and cleaning supplies. So this is a $2.1 million expenditure line in the forecast that there's little room for reduction. This is a slide on fuel expenditures updated for fiscal 25. You can see fiscal 25, we spent almost $183,000, which is definitely better than 2 years before when we spent $215,000, but it's still double what it was in fiscal 17. And these are, we know, we experience these as consumers and managing our own households. It's just on a grander scale. when it is a business like a school district. We're a $46 million business without any of the other funds, just general fund. So here's the textbook adoption schedule. You'll see 313,270, 650, 569, 779, 1.1 million in fiscal 31. So this is a very important expenditure line to watch.
And a lot of it too is state mandated, like the science and reading, like that's
Right.
the state law. So,
Now, I will say with the science and reading, for the first time, we received a stipend from the state for the high-quality instructional materials that we were mandated to get. And you said that they were $750,000 in cost, and we received 200. So that's better than nothing. That's better than no reimbursement or assistance from the state for the textbook adoption, but it's less than a third of the cost. So,
now we're looking at math.
pardon me?
Now we're looking at math.
So, we're going to look at line 3.05, which is the capital expenditures. Last year, we spent almost $800,000. Before that, we spent nearly 1.5 million. Well, this year, we're planning to spend only what we've spent so far or encumbered, which is 14.4 thousand. All right? You all remember that Fanning Howie Architects finished a capital assessment for the district last year, and our plan is to fund any capital improvements in the district, either through the 034 maintenance fund for Powers and HAH, or through PI. And PI will fund improvements at the high school and north. We are moving two mills, two inside mills, to permanent improvement. And that starts with calendar year 25, collection in 26. So the first roughly 890,000 that we'll be receiving for the first collection of 2025 will be in the February-March timeframe. That will go directly into the PI fund. Yeah,
Can I make
go
an
ahead.
anecdote again about that? So, again, understanding the scale, right? So, remember, 2 years ago, we had some air conditioning issues at AJH in April and May, near the end of the school year. And so, our custodians and mates working very hard to keep things running and do the best they can, but it might shut down over the weekend, things would happen. And you saw things on social media, right? Like, you can't have air conditioning working at AJH, our kids are hot. Absolutely agree with you on that. Well, the controls are old, it's a 20-year-old system, right? So we're looking into it. The recent quote we got was, hey, we have to replace it, which is it's that time. Is right now, the quote's about $1.2 million. Again, just absolutely we deserve air conditioning for our kids in hot May and August, right? But that's the scale. So the community just needs to understand the scale of these things. We agree with them, but it costs a lot of money. Like Amy said, this is the largest business employer facility in the district, in the community. So it just takes a lot of money to do these.
I have a hard time believing that AGH is that old.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
just remember when it
It's been
opened. It seems
online
like
for
it was
23
yesterday.
years.
23 years.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a long time.
Original
Yeah.
carpets too.
Yeah. Wow.
We talked about that last week at the Finance Audit Committee, that it's original carpet. That's
Wow.
a very well-maintained building,
Yeah.
but there's also been some concern that the equipment, the handlers, and the system that were installed in AJH when it was brand new were old technology by the time it was installed. And then another anecdotal tidbit here is the fact that the cost of the air handlers and HVAC system and building controls at AJH are going to deplete the 034 maintenance fund. So,
On a legislative note, that's why the cash balances, there was concern about the, I don't want to say the word attack, but I can't think of another word.
that's a good word.
The attack on cash balances, because you need to keep a certain amount of cash balance for situations such as that. Just like
For
your own
contingencies,
homes,
yes.
yeah, and your own home budgets, you keep that, if something breaks down, you have money, you know.
Well, just think about it for a minute from your own home perspective. If you put in an HVA system or a new furnace and air conditioning 10 years ago, you're going to need another one within the next 2 years. And And when you put that in then, it was probably $10,000. It's probably going to be $25,000 when you go to replace that heating and cooling system in your own house. And so compare the size of your home, whether it's a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, or 6-bedroom, it's going to cost you more. Well, take the size of AGH. How many rooms are in that building? And you've gotten 23 years, which probably was not thought we would get that from it initially. We pushed it to the max, probably 15 to 20 was the lifespan of that equipment. So I think it's important to understand that we have to keep it going, because if we don't, what's going to happen? We're going to have to go back and say, we need more dollars, and that's why it's important that we moved those 2 mills in there so that we don't have to do that, come back and say, oh, because with everything that's happening at the state level, we may not be able to do an emergency levy. So then, the building would sit with no air conditioning, just like it did back in the 50s and the 60s, and we would still have to educate the students with a fan going on.
Right, and then you have issues because of humidity in the building.
Correct.
And you could potentially have mold and remediation issues with that. So, I mean, there's no doubt that it needs to be done. We just know that it was old technology when it was installed. We know that it's been 23 years. So we've gotten good use, it's been well maintained, and it's going to deplete the maintenance fund. So those are some pretty big numbers that we're talking about right there. Miscellaneous expenditures, there are a few objects that are increasing kind of rapidly. I do have the expenditures throughout the forecast at $589,000. We don't really know enough about any of these expenditure categories, except that some are going to increase. We know that it's potential for bank charges, the 848 object code, for those to increase. Banks are in the business to make money, right? We know that any of the fees that we pay to the county auditor and treasurer, 845, 846, 847 object code, as we collect more, they collect more in fees. Enough said, right? $600,000, it's a lot of money, but it's a minuscule, immaterial amount as far as the entire forecast is concerned. So here's a snip of the forecast. This is kind of like the top half of the forecast. Your revenues are shaded in green, total revenue line 107. Total revenues with advances in and other financing sources is 2.08. Last year we collected $41,757,000, and we spent a total of $46,129,169. That was a deficit spend of $4,367,000. That is how much cash went out of our bank account due to deficit spending last year. If you want to look at the lower right hand of the page here, we'll see on line 1102 that we are modeling a property tax renewal, and that is the 2012 current expense levy that was most recently renewed in May of 22, a year early. We know that that needs to be renewed by the end. Excuse me, that was not renewed early. It was renewed in May instead of November. It next needs to be renewed by November of 27. That is a levy that generates $2.9 million. It needs to be renewed again by the end of 2027. So a half a year's collection is modeled in fiscal 28, and a full year's collection is modeled in 29. And then if you want to move down to line 13.01, 13.01 is, I'm jumping ahead, I'm sorry. Let's go to the next page. This is a Schedule B. It's probably more detailed than what anybody has an appetite for. Darker green is all general for current expense levies. The lighter green is the emergency levy. Debt service is the darker blue. Permanent improvement is orange. The library, it's a public school library, considered statutorily, shows up on our Schedule B. And then the recreation levy is that kind of slate blue. So it shows by levy what the type of levy it is, the purpose, the original voting, the original date of the levy, the last time it was renewed. It shows the full millage when it was voted in, and it shows the reduction factors, and thus it shows the effective rate. And then you'll see under resi, other, PUCO, personal, new construction, total. It shows by each classification of property how much we can generate. This is modeled at 98%. I don't usually talk a whole lot about delinquency rates when we're talking about the forecast, because you eventually collect it anyways. Even if it's upon sale of a home that's delinquent, you know, it ends up coming to us when the conveyance is completed. So this is a very, very detailed look at our levies. This is I think a better view of our assessed valuation and our calculated real estate revenue. You see in the upper right corner, our assessed valuation is just about $965 million. That's really crazy because it was well under $600 million when I started 7 years ago. So the assessed valuation has really, really increased, and we have benefited from inside millage growth and new construction. Yes, we have. Why did that happen?
I don't know.
She's the presentation
Might
privateer.
disconnect it for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes it sound like we're pirates.
It was a test to see if we're paying attention.
Yeah. And I'm just like having a heart attack up here as the presenter.
There we go, and we're back.
Right. All right, so this is the quick view. Our current expense levies are in the middle section, and our fixed sum levy, which is the emergency levy, it's the only fixed sum levy we have, generates about 4.1 million. So our total real estate is 24.8 million, and that's split between 3 lines of revenue. That's split between line 101, which is our real estate revenue, line 102, which is our public utility, personal property, and line 105, which is the reimbursements that come from the state. That's the homestead and rollback credits. Go back for a second. We know that there's some things that are going to be impacting line 101. We know that we have new construction, $10 to $15 million coming on each year recently. But when you calculate the impact of inside millage on new construction, it's like $50,000. It's not material at all. It's great that we get, you know, collection on new construction, because you know, as assessed valuation increases, the effective millage drops, so we never collect more than what the levy was intended to at the time it was voted in. So we also know that there are expiring abatements. There are a lot of expiring abatements. But again, when you talk about the materiality to the real estate collections, it's really not that much. Mr. Molnar and I received a file from the city of Lorraine and have been looking at it in this last few weeks. And we know 1/1/26 what assessed valuation is going to appear on our duplicate for those abatements that are expiring 2027. But again, it does not have a material impact on those lines of the forecast, those real estate lines. We also know that moving mills, and we're moving, in the process of moving 2 mills to PI, and we know that there will be a corresponding bump up to the 20 mill floor. At least we're hoping that that's going to happen, but that'll only happen for class 1 because we're not at the floor yet for class 2. Class 2, recall, is commercial, industrial, mineral, etc. And then last but not least, which is going to have the greatest impact of any of these bullet points, is legislation. There's so much legislation churning in Columbus right now. Property tax reform, it's under the guise of property tax reform. I myself think that it's legislation that is villainizing public schools. But that's just my humble opinion. The legislation could have very material and lasting impact on the Amherst schools. They've talked about eliminating inside millage. That's $5,017,000 a year. They've talked about eliminating the fixed sum levies,
Yep.
which it looks like they're gone now and will not be able to be renewed. Our emergency levy that was passed in 2008 as a 5-year emergency levy was renewed in 2013 as a 10-year emergency levy. It was renewed in May of 2022 and will need to be renewed again by 2033. But I don't think it will be able to be renewed. There will need to be a new current expense levy on fixed rate type levy. So that's very real when you talk about losing $4 million worth of revenue. Here is our line 101 revenue. We are blessed that, you know, it's increasing from under 15 million and exceeding 20 million in all years of the forecast, 27 through 29. That's wonderful, but it's not enough to sustain a large business such as Amherst Schools. We know that real estate collections can be revised, and we know, right, that forecast will change tomorrow as soon as I start recalculating things. So that presentation, or excuse me, the forecast is being presented to you this evening as what I know, like right now. We know that the inside millage move is going to have a corresponding bump back up to the 20-foot floor class 1. We know that we have new construction, substantial new construction. We have abatements expiring. And these all impact our 3 revenue lines for real estate, 101, 102, and 105. This slide shows the difference between our real estate revenue, line 101, and our unrestricted state aid. And you see what was under 15 million, real estate was under 15 million in fiscal 10, and in fiscal 10, unrestricted revenue was about 15.2, I think 15,214,000 at the time. So our unrestricted revenue exceeded our real estate revenue 15 years ago. What's happening throughout the forecast? Real estate revenue, local revenue, is surpassing our state aid. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but that's what's happening. And I heard it said before the meeting that school districts should get together and sue the state. Well, that's happened. That has happened. The DeRolf decision multiple times said that the state funding formula was unconstitutional, and it's yet to be fixed after 30 years, 30-ish years. So I think this is just going to worsen. I don't think it's going to ameliorate anytime soon. And this is a graphic that we should be using a lot in our travels. We're going to jump down to the bottom part of the forecast again and talk about line 1301, which is where we model new levies, and we're going to model, again, school district income tax. This is an earned school district income tax, protecting wages that aren't earned, right? So it protects retirements and investments for our older population, but anybody living in the district would be subject to the 1.5% earned school district income tax. We know, based on the statute that the board passed in June, that the desire is $10 million, new money, and the estimates are based on the Department of Taxation, and that is in the appendix. It's Appendix C. And then we also know that the timing of the collections, that full collection is phased in over 7 quarters. 7 quarters is the better part of 2 years. So what we expect to receive this year is, this is hard to read, but it is in Appendix C. In the first quarter of year 1, we are going to receive approximately 5.9%, $590,000. Then the next 4 quarters, we're going to expect about $7,040,000. And then in the next year, fiscal '28, we should have phase-in of the 10 million. Again, these estimates were received from the Department of Taxation in June. It could produce more or less. If the economy's thriving and personal wealth is increasing, we can collect more. If the economy shrinks and stales, we could expect less. We know that distributions from the Department of Taxation occur in January, April, July, and October, the month following the quarter end. And we know too that legislation could include the millage equivalent of our school district income tax, if it passes, in the calculation of the 20-mil floor, which would be a further detriment to the district. I don't even know how to forecast that. We just know that it's a detriment. So we'll work on those calculations. And are there any questions about the school district income tax and the presumption that the new money is necessary to our bottom line?
I think it would be important that we reiterate that the reason that we chose the $10 million was so that we wouldn't have to come back and ask for that in 1 or 2 years. We have put this on there for 5 years to do that. Is that not a true statement, Mr. Superintendent and Madam Treasurer?
Correct. Correct.
Because this board took a lot of time to debate the amount of money that we thought we would need moving forward based on all of the assumptions and all of the expenditures and everything. And we had a good debate about what the number should be, and we all come to consensus that the correct amount was 10 million. It's a little bit heavy on the front side, but till we get to there, it won't be heavy. We'll be short again, is my guesstimation.
Especially with the legislation.
Right.
Sure.
With everything that's going on. And so I think that this board did an excellent job in foreseeing that we didn't know what was going to happen with the state, but we tried to be ahead of that curve so we wouldn't be coming back to voters next year or immediately saying we need another fund, another campaign to fund what we've lost. So I think that I give kudos to everyone for their input on the board. And we did a lot of research about that, and we had some experts come in and explain to us, and I don't think the experts always agreed with the decisions that we made. But we felt that we were leaving the school district in a better spot in 5 years than we are right now.
And it wasn't just the research about school district income taxes, it was research about all of the different levy types.
Correct.
And knowing at the time that there was legislation in process that was, property tax reform-ish in nature, or eliminating things altogether, the decision for a school district income tax was trying to put eggs in a different basket. It's revenue, but it's a different kind of revenue stream. It's diversification of our revenue streams. And as you hear, Representative Thomas and all of that talking about on the backs of homeowners, property owners. And so that was another reason why the decision was made for a different type of revenue stream. And we tend to be a little bit progressive here in this district, wouldn't you say, Mr. Molnar?
Yes.
Thinking outside of the box, and we're trying to do that to benefit everybody in the process. So the bottom line of the the lower lines, this just shows the property tax renewal and income tax, new income tax. And then you see on line 1501, a $10.5 million carryover balance in fiscal '29, which is below the 30% carryover balance. And again, it's below the adequate cash reserves policy of the Board of Education, which I'm anticipating will be modified here this week. The 4-year forecast is a tool. You've heard this. To aid the district in making informed decisions, as informed decisions as the information we have at this time, really, it's cloudy, right? We talk about having a crystal ball. The art of the forecast is applying then those few things that we do know to project several years in the future. And it's tricky, and especially right now in this environment over the last 3 to 5 years where there is so much legislation that seems to be attacking schools rather than lifting public schools up, it is worrisome because, we can advocate for our district, our community, but if everybody doesn't advocate and make their voices heard, I worry that the legislation is going to go through and continue to erode the revenue of the districts and make it difficult for a public school district to be even viable. I did it again. I think that was me. Are there any questions? I think we've had a bit of a conversation while I was presenting, which is great. A thanks. In the letter of transmittal, I always thank the board. I always thank the superintendent, the administrative team, my administrative team in the office for just helping, for the discussion, for people to say, I think you're all wet with that assumption. I think maybe you should think in this way. And that's what's healthy, is the discourse that we've had. And the fact that for the last year and a half, the board and the senior admin team have been discussing what taxation looks like in this district. And I thank the community for their continued support of everything we do, and then just one more thing, Mr. Molnar, if you could talk about the metric today that came out about value added.
Oh yeah, I think I sent it to the board. The report card came out a few weeks ago, the state report card about academics and other factors with all schools in Ohio. I believe Ms. Hall is working on a presentation for our next board meeting at the end of October to share a full presentation about the report card and all the different facets in it. But I wanted to get out because we have had some questions on social media about our academics. Last year's report card 2024, when you look at the value added measure, which again, people look at the achievement score and then the value added score. Achievement score is how many kids pass the test. And we all know that achievement, looking at how many kids passed, the greatest alignment of that is the socioeconomic status of your district, right? So you can predict how achievement's going to be in every district in Ohio based on how much is the median income in the district. What you can't predict, and to see how school districts are really doing well, is what is a student's growth from one year to the next. So it doesn't matter if you're in an urban district where they're starting, the bar is low, or you're in a very wealthy district where they're already starting high. It doesn't matter where you're at. How much can a school district make you grow? How much value are we adding to a year's growth? So when you look at value added, which I think we've all for years thought is much more important than achievement, because that's how much value are our excellent teachers, programs, curriculum, how much are we making kids grow in a year? When you look at that and measure all the districts in Ohio, out of 607 districts, we are 44. So we're in the top 8% in the state with value added. So I think that's an important metric to share with the community. That again, is there value of what we're doing? And when you look at those three metrics of expenditures, we're the 37th best district in Ohio. Academically, we're the 44th best district in Ohio. And revenue-wise, we're the 99th district in Ohio. If you add those three or triangulate those three things, I don't know how you cannot understand that we're one of the best districts in Ohio for what we do, what kids receive, and the value that is given them by, again, the second lowest revenue in the state of Ohio. Now, some people want to argue that with me. I don't know how they can when you look at true facts and data. And I am looking to host a town hall to share all this information again for anyone who has not seen it, has not searched it out, but they'd like to hear more. We'll do it in person, hopefully next week. So look for more information on that coming up.
Do you have a tentative date of next week?
Thinking of all the community events that happen on different days of the week, like a lot of church events on Wednesday, and of course Friday football, I was looking possibly with Thursday next week. If not, it may end being the following Tuesday or something else. Whatever works for most of the community.
you. I hope that the forecast, the presentation, and the assumptions are something that have helped you make informed decisions for the district, and we continue to be a stellar district, you know, even being the second lowest revenue in the state, and 570th ranked in expenditures per pupil. This is an amazing district. I only hope that the legislation and things that are happening in Columbus uplift the Amherst schools like we need it to be. So, is there anything else, Mr. President, that you need from the forecast presentation? If
No,
not, we can carry on.
I thank you for all the work that you do in putting this document together twice a year. It's a lot of time consuming, research and data, and with all the changes, it's even harder, more difficult, I'm sure. And now you're going to be on your own schedule, a new schedule, so you'll be ready to go come February.
Yes.
Come February, not even spring. No.
And just one more comment is House Bill 96, which was the biennial budget bill, where they sneaked in so many other things. One of them was the additional latitude of the County Budget Commission and the fact that the 5-year forecast for the school districts, 4-year forecast, needs to be submitted to the County Budget Commission. We are not aware of a protocol or procedure to do that. So know that tomorrow we will submit this, the forecast assumptions, to the County Budget Commission, and I presume, because we've not been given any other direction, that will satisfy the requirement of House Bill 96. So.
And I'm going to say, Amanda, I think that whatever we need to do to, from your perspective, as you follow all this legislation in great detail, when I read some of, you know, the commissioners should have a say in school budgets. I wholeheartedly disagree with that completely, because how are they going to do that with 13, 14 school districts in Lorain County? How are they going to have a pulse on all 14 of those school districts to know whether or not? So it's not going to be a thought-out process. It's going to be a stamp, or it's going to become much more of a political process. And education should not be a political process. It should be a process where we know what we're doing, and based on the people that we put on the public and put the people on the board that they put on, to make sure that they manage that money to the best of their abilities and get the most bang for their bucks. You know, I think so many times we see things happen where money goes where politicians are, and I don't think that. So anything that we can do to persuade that not to happen. If it happens, we'll have to deal with it, but I would certainly encourage you to make sure that we all know how to stop that.
I believe that was one of the line item vetoes, and then it got overruled.
And it got overruled, yeah, because I read that this afternoon, some of that stuff, and I thought, you know, I just think, where would we be today had that been the process all along? Because if, for some reason, the elected official doesn't like that school district, and that shouldn't be the way a school district runs.
Yep.
I don't have anything further to bring before the board this evening. Does any other board member have anything?
Nope.
If not,
I'll make a motion.
take a motion to adjourn.
We have a location for that town hall?
No, I'm searching for it right now. We can hold in the school district. Looking for a neutral location, still looking, but if we can't find one large enough, possibly, again, for size and who manages doing the school district, probably Powers or Steel. I'll let you know.
We need to accept the forecast.
Oh,
I was gonna say, we have to make it,
I'll make a motion to accept the forecast.
Second.
So we have a motion to accept the presented forecast this evening that we reviewed, so that it can be submitted. Is there any discussion or further questions on it? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mrs. Gillis. Dr. Messer.
Aye.
Mr. Zappa. Mr. Engel.
Now we would entertain a
I'll
motion
make a
for
motion to
adjournment.
adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor for adjournment. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gillis. Dr. Messer. Mr. Zappa.
Both motions passed.
Thank you.